Half the men you know between 18 and 49 have a betting app on their phone. That is not a guess. That is a survey from last year. And here is what most people do not know about the Catholic Church's position on this. The Catechism does not say gambling is a sin. It never has. But something has changed, and it's changed fast. And if you're Christian, you need to understand what actually shifted, because it's not the doctrine, it's the product. Hi, I'm Jonathan. I appreciate you watching. If you get any value from this, please subscribe. So, this is the first episode of a new series where we take Christian and Catholic principles and apply them to what is actually happening in the world right now. And we're going to move in layers. What you can see, what reason alone tells us, what scripture adds, and what the church specifically teaches. You will know exactly when I move from one to the next, and that's on purpose. I'm not going to try to hide the ball. So, let's get going. This is layer one. Just the numbers. Just what is actually happening. You do not have to believe anything to believe or see this. In 2018, the Supreme Court struck down the federal ban on sport betting. States rushed in, and here is where they are now. 27% of Americans have an active online sportsbook account. 52% of men between ages 18 and 49. That second number was 19% 2 years ago, and it's still climbing. 90% of the bets are placed on phones. More than half are live bets, placed during the game, in play, every few seconds. Bet on the next pitch, bet on the next play, bet on whatever LeBron is doing next. Who knows? Since online betting was legalized, calls to the National Gambling Hotline are up almost 23%. Suicide in those states are up as well, concentrated among young, unmarried, less educated men. Bankruptcies up 25 to 30%. 3 to 4 years after online betting arrives in a stake, that is roughly 30,000 additional bankruptcies nationwide. And it bleeds sideways. Legalization is linked to 10% rise in binge drinking among men under 35 who already had been binge drinking. Here is the one I want to sit with you. Physical betting, going to a casino, going to the track, does not do this. Legalized online betting does. Same activity, same money changing hands, different delivery mechanism. And only one of them produces this crisis. So hold on to that, because it tells you something almost every argument about gambling right now is missing. Layer two, reason on its own. You still do not have to be a Christian to believe this. You just have to be honest. A bet, in an ordinary sense, requires free choice. I have money I do not need. I know the odds. I know what I'm risking. I decide. Two people can look at each other across from a card table and know exactly what they are doing. And that's not what these apps are selling. Micro betting places wagers every few seconds. Researchers who study these patterns compare them to like slot machine reinforcement schedules. The design copies the mechanism casinos already know is the most addictive one they've ever invented. And it puts it in your pocket. And it fires it during a football game that you were watching anyways. Nobody makes free choices every 4 seconds or 3 seconds. So this is not how human decision making actually works. And the app knows that. And that's the point. So think about what is actually being sold. It's not a wager. It's not entertainment. It is the removal of your own capacity to deliberate. You are paying in installments for the destruction of your own judgment. Any reasonable ethic tradition. You do not have to be Catholic. You can be Aristotle. You can be secular. You can be humanist. But we all recognize that free consent is not just checking a box. It requires an actual condition in which a person can think. A product engineer to defeat those conditions is not natural. It is just something some people misuse. It is something whose entire business model depends on the misuse. 90% of online bettors under 34 believe they can make money on sports betting. 90%. In highlight, only 30% say they have actually won more than they have lost. The gap is not accidental. The gap is the product. So let's see what Scripture adds. And this is layer 3. Now, I am going to bring in the Bible. And I want to be very careful here because I'm not going to bludgeon anyone with a verse. That is not what Scripture is for. Scripture does not have a specific rule against wagers. It just doesn't. Anyone who tells you otherwise is bringing something into text that's not there. But Scripture has an enormous amount to say about what happens to a human heart when they start to chase money as a source of meaning. Paul writes to Timothy, "The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And in their eagerness to be rich, some have wandered away from their faith and pierced themselves with many pains." Notice what he does not say. He does not say money is evil. He does not say a good life is evil. He says the love of it, the chase, the thing that starts to occupy the place in your heart that was meant for something else. And listen to how he ends that sentence. Pierced themselves, not were pierced by, pierced themselves. That is what this is. That is what an addiction is. It is a wound you keep giving yourself because the brief relief feels at the moment like it's worth deepening the pain. So if you're watching this, and I know that it is what's going on in your life, your own life right now, you are not being called a bad person here. I want to make that clear. You are being told the truth by someone who loves you. Scripture is not shaming you. It's grieving with you, and it's telling you there's a way out. Proverbs says wealth got quickly will dwindle, but the one who gathers little by little will increase it. The whole Old Testament wisdom tradition is a warning against the get-rich-quick expectation. Not because God is against you being well off, because he knows what the shortcut does to your soul. And Jesus himself said, "Where your treasures is, there your heart will be also." So ask yourself, not a defensively ask, but honestly, where is your treasure? Where does your attention go when you are bored? What are you refreshing? That is your treasure, whatever it is. So let's move on to the fourth layer here. And this is where I say something distinctively Catholic, and you may be surprised. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 2413, here's the whole thing. Games of chance or wagers are not in themselves contrary to justice. They become morally unacceptable when they deprive someone of what is necessary to provide the needs to others. The passion for gambling risks becoming an enslavement. That's it. That is the teaching. The church has never banned this. Bingo has been in parish halls for 100 years. Dioceses have ran raffles. The church did not treat a card game or a wager as evil. But look at where the church drew the line. 2 places. When it deprived someone of what he and his family need, and when passion for it becomes an enslavement. Those are the exact 2 things the modern app was engineered to produce. And that's why the church's position is not outdated. It is the most current thing in the room. The tradition drew from the line of enslavement 300 years before anyone knew what variable ratio reinforcement schedule was. And the modern product walked up to that line and crossed it on purpose. Aquinas has a beautiful teaching about play. He calls it, I'm going to mess this one up, ut rapilia. Play is a virtue. Recreation is good. Human beings need rest, and rest sometimes means a card game with friends or a bet on the game with your brother-in-law, or watching your team and hoping. The church has always defended that. What the church cannot defend, and what no honest reading of Aquinas could defend, is a product that makes the form of play and uses it against you. This is not eutrapilia. Correct me there. Someone drop it in phonetically in the comments. But it's the destruction of it. So the doctrine did not change. The product did. The church is not being asked to update her teaching. It's being asked to name what is happening, which she already did. So let's move on. Now let me say some things I do not want you to miss. Most people who use these apps are fine. A study of the 9 million bettors during one NFL season found that 60% of bettors accounted for just 1% of the revenue. That's the real harm. The harm is concentrated. It's not universal. If you bet $10 on the Super Bowl once a year with your brother, you're not the person this episode is about. And you know that, I know that. And I have to say the awkward thing before someone in the comments says it for me. The church's own hands here are not perfectly clean. Parishes have taken bingo money. Dioceses have accepted gambling revenue. States now depend on it for taxes. I'm not going to dodge that. But here is why the distinction still matters. If the tradition has been imperfect at applying its own principle, that is not a reason to throw the principle out. That is a reason to apply it more clearly, especially now when the product has become something that old parish bingo was not. You can hold both. The church has been inconsistent. The teaching is still right, though. The teaching may, in fact, indict the church on its own inconsistencies. That is what a real tradition does. It stays true even when its members do not. So, if this landed, share it with someone who needs it. Not the person that you want to score points against, but the person you actually care about. And on the next episode, we're going to talk about loneliness. Why the third places are gone. Why so many men have no friends. And what the tradition, natural law, scripture, and the church has to say about it. Same structure, same honesty. Hope to see you there.